Today is Thursday, January the 8th, 2015. This is our first interview of this year. Joe Turner and myself, Judy Meyer, are talking to Vivian Hicks. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And Vivian, I've never met you before, and so I'm going to be asking you questions about where you've lived and about your memories and any stories and memories you might want to tell us about Bridgeton and concerning even the neighboring areas. That's what we want to hear about. So let me start off by asking you, Vivian, where were you born?
I was born in Sturgis, Kentucky, which
Oh.
is called Morganville and Sturgis, and I'm not sure if there are other towns around it. It's called Union County.
And when were you born, may I ask?
I was born in my grandmother's home in 1934.
1934. How long did you live in Kentucky before you came to St. Louis then?
Before I was dragged up here in St. Louis, I come up when I was 8 for a while, and then stayed indefinitely in the winter time when I was 10 years old. And then in the summer I was sent back to Kentucky to my grandmother's for the summer.
And then when did you start living here permanently?
After my grandmother died, when I was not sure, I think I was around 16
Okay.
when she passed away.
All right. And then did you go to school here in St. Louis?
I went to 3 schools in St. Louis City.
In the city?
I went to Union over on, what was that name? The school on Union.
You mean a high school or a grade school?
Grade school. And we live on Maple Avenue right across
okay.
from, I believe it was DeHart School.
Okay.
I knew all of these names 3 months ago, now they're out of my head.
Right.
And then they sent me to one over on Page that had for speaking lessons.
Uh-huh.
And I walked on to those things.
Mm-hmm.
We kids didn't have a bus, and we didn't only ride the streetcar when it was necessary.
Did you have brothers and sisters here?
And I have no little brothers and sisters. I got half or step brothers, however you want to see it. Sister and brother. My mother got remarried when I was about 10 and a half.
Uh-huh.
So I'm a good 11 or 12 years older than you.
I see. Now, did you go to high school then here in St. Louis, you said?
Yes, I went to Pattonville.
Oh, you did? And when you went to Pattonville High School, was it located on St. Charles Rock Road?
Yes, it was. But I liked it when we left the city and came out here is that Fifi was covered with beautiful trees on both sides, nice and shady. It was wonderful walking up and down Fifi Road.
Is that where you lived on Fifi?
Yeah, we lived in right next to the Jewish home.
Oh, uh-huh.
The homes that you see there now was not there back in 48.
In 48 is when you
Yes,
moved over there.
That's when we moved out to the country.
How about...
And we called it country then because the city is the city and the homes are so close together in the city, you can hear the neighbors talk from their own house right into your house.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I was so glad to get out more in the country because I was raised 4 miles out of town, and your homes are not that close together. People's got maybe 60 acres, maybe 70, and as they go far out, as you know, the farms gets bigger.
Well, tell me about your house that you moved into on Fifi Road. What was it like?
Well, I would call it a square house.
A squirrel?
Square.
Square. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, because it didn't have no porch on it. It was closed in. And the first 2 rooms in the front was made into bedrooms at that time. And then you walked like a little hallway. You had a living room, and in the back was a big kitchen. And then we put a bathroom in, and closed the living room down a little bit. And then they had another bedroom in the back. And then one day my mother decided to put a basement under the house.
So there was not a basement when you first came
No,
there?
just a tiny one, big enough to get downstairs. They have an old coal furnace that you put coal in and have your hot water tank and that.
And she wanted to do what? Expand it and make it bigger.
She
So,
wanted a 4 basement for a washing machine.
oh sure. So, did that happen?
Yeah. Mother was able to do that, and then she put siding on it. I never did like the siding. I liked the whole White House better myself.
Uh-huh. So how many of you lived in that house?
There was my stepfather and my new stepsister, who was about, well, she was born in January, and we moved out there in March.
So she was just a baby.
Yeah, she was just a baby. Then I guess a year later, my stepbrother was born.
And you were already a teenager then.
I was already a teenager then.
Did you get a part-time job after school or whatever?
I did for a while, but then when I got sick for a few days with pink eye, my mother wasn't much about telling people anything. Maybe that's why she grew up, but I doubt it, because she was a good cook.
Uh-huh.
She didn't like me in the kitchen messing around. And she didn't tell me I had to call in and tell them I was sick with pink eye. I worked at Union May Stones in the office.
What was it?
Union May Stones, and
Where was that located?
down in the city,
So you were
close
living
to Famous and Bar.
you were living on Fifi in the Patton Mill area,
Yes.
and then but you had a part-time job that was all
Well, there was nothing out here at that time for jobs. You didn't have Northwest Plaza. You had Overland, but well, some of the shopping was done, but mainly you went to Ralston. Ralston at that time was a big shopping area. And then you go further down in the city by where Famous and all the big stores are.
Uh-huh.
And Union May Stones combined with another store back then, but I can't remember who it was.
Carson, maybe?
Huh?
Carson, maybe?
It could be. Yeah.
And what kind of work did you do for them?
I wrote out letters and addresses on cars and that for people for their bills. That's what I did. I enjoyed that.
Good.
But after I didn't show up for 3 days and I went back to work, they told me I was fired. But I see, I didn't know I had to call in.
Yeah.
So after that, I didn't go back to work for a long time. But you either had to walk 2 miles to the bus stop, and at that time the bus stop and the main office for that was in St. John's, right where Walgreens is sat today. Or you had to walk 2 miles towards Melton Heights and take the streetcar all the way to Del Mar Loop, and then we changed to another streetcar to go downtown.
My goodness, well that was kind of a lot, especially to do after school.
Yeah, especially when you're 10 years old. And that's
Teenager.
a long ways, because grandmother never allowed us to run around like that.
Right. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Girls had to stay close to home.
Yes.
The boys could run around, but not the girls.
Uh-huh.
And I was 17 years old before I was allowed to wear slacks.
Before you were allowed to wear slacks?
Yeah, or jeans or anything like that. Girls always had to have skirts or dresses on.
I think that's an interesting point to make, because when I went to high school, we weren't allowed to wear slacks either. So on a very cold day like today is, we could wear pants, but then you would take them off when you got to school.
Well, they let us keep our pants on as long as we had a skirt over.
Now, did you graduate from Pattonville High School?
Well, let's put it this way, sort of. I could 11th grade.
Oh, I see.
But as old as I am, I was told by people that I worked for through the years. Just say you graduate. They're not going to check it. You're too old to really matter because they really didn't teach you anything in school about jobs.
Uh-huh.
We had 2 study halls because Pattonville didn't have that many subjects back then. We just had our reading, our writing, our arithmetic, our history, and geography. They was all separate.
Uh-huh.
Today I understand they got history and geography mixed together.
So after you left Pattonville High School, then were you working?
Just a little bit here or there. I really wasn't working. I got married about 18.
When you were about 18?
Yeah.
So where did you meet this guy? And what was his name?
His name was Curtis Hicks.
Curtis.
His family bought one of the old houses down the street that either the Bazans or the Knowles had built.
I see.
2-story house. And that's where I met him. My mother was always one who assisted people on the date. I didn't care too much for dating. I liked running around with the kids from church because we went to a lot of church services and that. And the only one out here at that time that was really nice to you was Miss Presbyterian Church. And that was combined also with the Presbyterian Church in Maryland Heights. And I went a lot of groups with the kids for the choir and singing at their other churches and babysitting when the adults had something important to do, and for Bible study and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I got married, of course I moved around in the city some, and then we came back out this way. And then Mother said that they was building a Christian church, which was up on 80 Road. And then I went back to the Christian church where I had originally come from down home in Sturgis.
Oh, I see. Now, what kind of work did your husband do?
Well, he worked for a while for his Uncle Patterson. But he didn't like to get up and go to work every day.
Uh-oh.
And then he drove a gravel truck for a while. He was in the Navy for about 3 months because he was in Naval League Cadets when he was a young boy. And I guess he just didn't like being up in Chicago away from his family. So they released him and he came back home.
Was this after you were married?
That was, yeah. The first year we was married, he was up in the Navy for 3 months up in Chicago.
Uh-huh.
And then he came back home. That was back in 1952.
And you had children?
I got 8 of them.
8 children?
I had 10 children altogether. I had 8 living. Yeah.
Well, that kept you busy.
Well, yes, it did. But I enjoyed it because I enjoyed kids. I didn't have quite that much trouble with my kids when they was young.
Did they go to Pattonville schools?
They went to They went to Rittner. They went to Pattonville, and then for 1 year we moved into Delphine and Overland, and they went to Rittner for a year. And one of my girls went to that, where the post office is now, was a school for Rittner, for kids that went to school for, I don't know what you want to call it, I can't remember, but where they learned a trade.
Oh, uh-huh.
And I had a daughter, Susan, that went there. And
Oh.
she used to get embarrassed because she would beat all the boys and mechanics. She had to show them how to change oil and all of that kind of stuff.
Well, good for her. Good for her.
And my oldest daughter, V, when she went to Rittner, she went to 4th, 5th, and 6th all at the same time. And when she came back to Pattonville, they really didn't have anything for her because they didn't have enough work to keep her busy, and that she was always kind of ahead of them.
Uh-huh.
And the other kids, they was just kind of neutral in school.
Uh-huh. Did most of them graduate from Pattonville, though?
Yeah.
And were you pleased with the Pattonville school system for your children?
To a point, yes. I think that teachers, not only today, but in the past to take slow kids and give them more training, give them more time to learn their lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, all they're doing is passing them over.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not fair to the child because I was a slow one.
Yes, you're right.
And
I understand.
I put that down because my grandmother told me when I was little, and my aunts and uncles, that when one of my uncles, say, was knocking a wooden plank off of a well, he thought all his kids was back far enough, and it hit my head and split it.
Oh, wow.
I guess split it open anyway. They said it hit my head, so I presume they meant split open. And that may cause some of the slowness for the school,
Mm-hmm.
for me learning.
I see.
But I enjoy learning. I could, after a while, I could learn the poems and all that stuff by hand.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember that when my daughter, when she got 5 years old, went to Pattonville, one of the teachers boarded me out because she knew her address, she knew her name, she knew the telephone number, she knew she could read a poem and turn around and repeat it just like that, right back to her. That's why Vivian, I call her V, but I named her after me, Vivian. That's why she could, school was dull for her, trying to get new things to keep her interested. But she eventually quit in the 10th grade and got her GED, and she went on to college.
Oh,
She's got a master's degree in teaching.
good for her. Does she live here in St. Louis?
She went to Arizona.
Oh, wow.
She went to Texas, and then from Texas to California, and now she's in Arizona.
I see. Does she have children?
She's got 2. My grandson lives out in Foley, Missouri. And her daughter lives in Texas. And she keeps going in and out of college. She can't figure what degree that she really wants.
Is this your daughter you're talking about?
This is my daughter's kids.
Oh, I see.
Christine Baradina.
I see.
And my grandson is Doug Baradina.
I see. Well, just tell me now, when your kids were growing up, what years do you think that would have been?
Let's see.
In the 60s?
He was born in 1952. She's supposed to come in 53. She came in 52. Mark was born in 57. Doug was born in 58. And then Bruce was born in 60. Chris was born in 62. Susan was born in 64. Tamara was born in 68, and Stephen was born in 69.
Were you still living in this school? What
School
kind of?
district, yeah.
No, on Fifi Road.
Yes. My mother had a great big garage there by the side of her house, and that's where we lived, is in her garage.
How long did you live there?
Well, we lived there for most of the kids' life.
Wow.
Is that house still standing now?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
One of the Conley's kids have bought the house, but I don't know who they married.
Uh-huh.
I just learned recently that their mother and father had passed away. I called down to talk to Mama Conley. And her son answered the phone. One of her sons went to school with Stephen. And he told me that she passed away. But up and down that street, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people that I know of that moved through the years that we was there. Right next door to us was Butler's, and they only had 1 child, and they eventually moved to Illinois someplace. And then next to them, when I was about 12, Wolf family moved in. I'm going down on the left side. I don't know who lived in a house before the Wolfs did. And then they had a big old house that they rented that was and tore down and got a beautiful brick house there, which was right next to the McClanahan house. And Pam had 3 brothers, and then her and the McClenahans did. And then her grandmother lived on the little house with the porch, because that was their land, and she had her son build his house there so that they could live close to his mother, I guess, because we all was fairly close when we was younger. And then the next house, I don't know, can't remember who lived in it, but then that's the house that my husband's sister bought for her mom and dad to live in. And I guess the big house the kids are talking about, Bruce, I guess that guy's named Patterson that owns that great big 2-story house now. I don't know. It used to belong to an old lady, I believe her name was Bowden. As you go down. And then there's a big farm on the corner there by Edwards. One of my girlfriends from school married one of their son, and that was McDaniels.
Now that's getting it kind of into Maryland Heights, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That's where the nursing home is now.
That's closer down into actually Maryland Heights. What about the Fifi Cemetery? Did you ever go around in the Fifi Cemetery while you were living there, or did your kids talk about, you know, just running through the cemetery at all?
My mother's got a little girl she named, I believe, Helen, that she's got buried up there. My mother had 6 kids, and she's only had myself and my stepbrother Jim and my stepsister Pat living. And that's where she buried one of hers. The other ones I couldn't tell you about because I don't remember. But that's the only one I do remember. And she had named that Helen, she buried up there.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
But as far as the cemeteries, I never went through the cemeteries.
I was just wondering. And your children, did they ever talk about going through the cemetery, just walking through it or anything?
No, they didn't. I know they ran around with the grandparents, but they lived up on Layman.
Oh, uh-huh. Well, that's kind of across from the cemetery.
Yeah.
Well, what about when Northwest Plaza was being built? What was that like for you and your family? Did any of your children get jobs there?
No, none of my children ever worked at Northwest Plaza. I don't think any of the kids around the neighborhood really went up there to get a job. I think they went elsewhere to get jobs. By then you was getting more cars and that, and people was getting cars for driving and that. Because the girls would be getting married, and I couldn't tell you where they all went. But I knew them all up on Layman and Oak. I know one of the ladies on Oak, she bought the house from Miss King that was down past, the first house down past Edwards, was Maryland Heights starts there. Her daughter's just redoing that house on the inside, and she put green siding on it. And her mother just passed away. I think it was October. I can't remember if it was this year or last year. And Sanders, she lives there now. She inherited the house. And then when you come back on the other side, you had a great big farmhouse that belonged to Bowden family. So I don't know if those two was connected on each side or not. She only had one child that I know of that we went to school with. And then next, for a while, Mr. Holman rented a brick house right next to it when he came to be principal at Pattonville. And then next to that house is where Dave and George McCubey was raised. And next to that was another brick house. And they said a school teacher lived there, but I don't recall ever meeting her. The reason I know a lot of the people is I sold Girl Scout cookies. And I went all up and down Fifi. And then next to them was James's. And James's was next to Dr. Bazan and Helen's house, the chiropractor. And then next to them was his brother, or brother-in-law, and the Knowles that had the grocery store. in the great big beautiful brick house. And if I'm not right, I think Rhonda had about 6 or 8 kids
9 maybe.
that she had. And next to them was another house. Ferguson rented it for a while, a White House. And then Amy Miller and her 2 kids rented it, and her husband rented it for a while. She was a school teacher that we was friends with. And next to that again was your open land where Dave McCubey has a house now after he grown up. And then his brother built one there too, where they sold and then moved out. And then the big house that's always changed was a big white house that belonged to Klaus's. Because my stepsister ran around with the Klaus girl. And of course they had moved on. Then you had Tilly Anna's house. And she's passed away, so her daughter sold it and they moved out to St. Peter someplace. Tilly had 2 sons, and Laura, she adopted her niece because she was so sick and his family really didn't have the money to help pay for the son she did. So Tilly adopted her. And then it was all land again. And then you had Asmus that lives there. She still lives there.
Who's that?
Asmus in a big brick house. And behind that brick house, she's got a great big garage. And then it was all land for a while till Brannick's built a house there. He's the one that has the bank, had the bank in St. John's. And the other 2 houses owned up there to Fifi. I couldn't tell you who they are.
Did you go to Brannity's store?
Oh, we'll go to Brannick's store all the time. I'm in school with the Brannick boys.
You did?
Yeah. But a lot of the kids have moved on either St. Charles or St. Peter's and all of that. So as you get married and start your family and all that, you kind of lose track of a lot of them. Now Norma LeJeune that lived up that way, she lived over by, over Oak, off of, what is that street that goes clear across to 270? Where they
Old
made
St.
the,
Charles.
where they made the cars. I call them street cars, but they're not. Those cars that people ride back and forth. They look like street cars, but they're not. She lived over in that area. And then when the airport brought all those people out over there, they found the house, and she's living down in Mellon Heights now. Her husband's been dead for quite a few years. Bone cancer.
Did your family and your ever go to Westlake amusement park?
Oh yes, they went there quite a bit.
Did you go or just your children?
I went with my mom when I was little. I didn't take my children too much. I didn't care for the parks. Too many people was in them. I'd rather stay home and read a good book. It was. It was really crowded with a lot of people. But a lot of times you go down there and watch the people race their boats
Oh,
and stuff like that. Because at one time there was a lot of homes down there in the front, and people lived down there. I got to know some of them, but I don't remember who they are now. But eventually, I guess they had them sell out, and they moved on to other places because Creeker Lake used to come up and flood in there certain times of the year.
wow.
And we used to walk the trails in there because I liked the trail where that Indian was there
Yeah.
with tears in her eyes.
Right, yes, I've heard of that.
But I haven't been back there in so long I can't remember what her verse was or what it said, but I know she was crying for her lover.
Right,
to
that's
come
the
home.
story, I think. It's on
Yeah.
a plaque or sign there.
Yeah, there's
Yes.
a big plaque there.
Uh-huh.
And I presume it's still there. I haven't been back there in years.
I haven't been over there myself in a long time.
But in all the land that got there now, new people have moved in, they've been there for years, but I don't know who they are. Because for a while, I moved into, Mom moved up in West Haven when they built a new house. I rather had the old house myself. It was warmer. and she moved up to West Haven for a while. And then when I got a divorce, she moved in Overland. We lived together on Midland for a while. And my kids went Halloweening into Overland and that. And once in a while, I'd bring them out on Fifi to some of the older people that I knew, like Asmus and Honors and them, and where they could get candy from to see some of the kids.
Vivian, you mentioned earlier that you had been active in selling Girl Scout cookies.
Oh, yes.
Did you also have a Girl Scout troop that you ran?
No.
So these were your girls that were in a troop?
We had a Girl Scout, some lady, I don't remember who, when I was a young girl in the Brannicke's basement, before they built their new one on Fifi. And then we moved over to Fifi. But she never gave anybody any badges. We never got our badges or anything. And my girls had the same thing with their troop leaders when we lived in Overland for 2 years. So I didn't put the younger ones in the Girl Scouts.
There was a lady on Ludlow that had Girl Scouts for a long time. What's her name?
Oh, yes, I know who you're referring to. I'm not sure the name right this very
At
minute.
that time, the only thing that we sold was chocolate chips. I used to sell over 100 boxes of those.
Wow.
And at that time, I believe they was 50 cents a box.
Right. Yeah. But when I sold them, I
you really sold them back then.
Yeah. Yes. I remember selling Girl Scout cookies as well when I was young.
But then you get the leaders, they don't get their badges together and they don't give the kids their badges. I had the same thing with my boys when they went into Cub Scouts down at Briarcrest Grade School. They're on, I guess it's off of 80 Road.
Right.
I guess that road that turns is still 80, I'm not sure.
I think
but my
so.
boys was in their Cub Scouts down there. Then when they got older, Mark and Doug and Stephen, they went into Navy League cadets at the Navy base.
Oh.
So they were 17 years old. And that's a good organization for boys, it's Navy League cadets. Now I understand they have it just on the weekends and not on Friday night. I like it better on Friday night. But they got to where they started it on early Saturday morning and early Sunday morning.
Now, is this Bridgeton area that you're living in now?
No, this is St. Anne's
Okay.
that we're living in now.
But you lived in Bridgeton on and off, it sounds like, through your life.
Yes, I did. I like Bridgeton much better.
Do you ever, or do your children, grandchildren ever go up to the Bridgeton pool in the summer?
No, because their pools are, you pay more money if you don't have a car that you live in Bridgeton. St. Anne's, I don't buy a car for St. Anne anymore. I think it's crazy. You have to have a card in order to get in for a decent price to the swimming pool. I had one for a while for the kids to go swimming up at the swimming pool. And I lived over on Island from 1964 till, I'm trying to think of what year. Until just lately. I guess I've been here 5 years now with my daughter. Because when my mother passed away, my stepbrother, my mom put the house in his name for safekeeping and he sold it out from under me. So I'll come over here to live with my daughter. But my oldest son's Mark, I knew the lady that ran the swimming pool up there because I used to swim once in a while over in University City. And when I was 16.
Park, maybe?
Yeah. And she used to be the ticket lady over there. And when I came up and met her again, I was surprised to find out that she came over to St. Anne's. And my son would go up there and help him clean the pools once in a while, and she would let him go swimming in that. So I thought that was really nice of her because we didn't always have money. Because I lived on welfare with the 8 kids, and it wasn't too easy to get by, but I managed.
When you lived on Fifi Road, did you have mail delivery there, or did you collect your mail from Branicki's?
I collected, when I lived on Fifi, the mailman came around and put it in a box on the road. Lucas was the last name. I can't remember his first name. And then he lived up on Fifi Road towards where the park is. I'm not sure where his son is living, but I used to go out and talk to him all the time when he came by at the mailbox. Because that's what my grandfather was. He was a mailman down in Kentucky. And he used to go out on Christmas morning and make sure that there was no packages or anything at the post office. If there was, he'd take them out and deliver them on Christmas to the people. So
That was very nice.
So that they could get their stuff.
My husband was a mailman as well.
And we talked about your almost neighbors, Eloise and Larry Brockman.
Yeah.
They were,
was catty corner across the street.
When you lived on Fifi, you mean?
When we lived on Fifi.
Oh,
yeah.
for heaven's sakes.
And on Sunday on Fifi, a lot of the I guess Brockman got together too. I didn't know who the guys was at that time because it was all new. They would go out there in the front lawn of the Jewish home and play baseball and that, and the older people would come out and sit and watch them play baseball and that. And a lot of the young kids would go up there and play. But I would imagine that Brockman, if he thought back, might know more about that than I. I just know that there was older kids that came out and played every Sunday. And the older people came out. Now why they moved the Jewish home into the city, I don't know. But those people really loved it out there because it's peaceful and it's quiet. And it was safe out there on Fifi.
There's a lot to be said for that. Peaceful and quiet and safe. That's those are important
big yards.
things.
The kids didn't play in the street like they do today. Here they all play in the street. They forget there's a park down there where they should play. They play out here in the street. You have to stop for them. I just don't know what parents are thinking about letting the kids play in the street.
Yeah, well, they do that in our area as well.
and you live right next to the park.
Yes, I live right next to a park. And
What I hated about Fifi, after, I guess I must have been about 17, when they started cutting all the trees down.
Oh.
And then it was all hot and that when you walked down there, it wasn't shady and it wasn't nice and that because my girlfriend and I, Norma and June, used to walk all down Fifi through Mellon Heights, back up 80 Road, and then back up into Bridgeton by her house, which is 2 blocks from Layman. And then I would walk home all the way back down to Fifi, 3300 block of Fifi where I live.
then what was her name, your friend?
Norma Lejeune.
LeJune?
Lejeune.
LeJune. That was her last name.
That was her, that was her maiden name.
Where did she end up moving to, do you know?
Yeah, I thought she and her husband, Roy Honey, moved over, like I told you, over there where the, off of Hanley, over there where the airport bought all of that land over there. And, well, by then her kids...
North Hanley Road.
Her kids was grown, so she and her husband had to find another house, another place to move, and they moved down into Mellon Heights.
Okay.
In Arrow Heights.
I see,
He
yes.
passed away a few years ago with bone cancer.
Oh, I see.
So, but she's still living there.
Okay.
You've mentioned a couple of times about lots of trees on Fifi Road had been cut down. Was that for any particular reason? Were they diseased?
At that time, they didn't widen the road like they say they was going to do back then. I have no idea. I just know how beautiful it was and what made it look so pretty on Fifi. And next thing you know, here I guess I was about 18 and they're cutting the trees all down, taking the shade and it all away. And they never did widen the road at that particular time. It don't look like they're widening it much now if that's what they're doing to it, but I know that they're working on Fifi right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, they've been working on the sewer for about a year.
But other than that, there used to be a little store about from Edwards down to Old Midland where the streetcar tracks went.
Yeah.
There used to be a little knick-knack store down there in Allen Heights. And they had the best stuff. I guess the people just got too old to decide to give it up. But they had the best knicks-knacks I've ever seen. And if you wanted something, they ordered it for you. And they wasn't expensive like you see in the stores today. They was reasonable. They didn't double up their
What was the name of the store?
I have no idea.
It wasn't a grocery store, though.
No. The grocery store was all the way up on the hill. And on the right-hand side, left-hand side of the hill used to be the flower shop. You had a big hill you had to go up and park your car to get to the flower shop. Well, on the right-hand side, when you went around the corner, you had Sullivan grocery store. And then you had the post office. And then you had on a great big hill, set on a great big hill, was the Presbyterian church. And see, all that stuff is gone now. Your hill is down. They got other stuff there. And the Presbyterian church is 2 blocks around the corner, behind, almost behind the junior high that they built up there on Fifi. So all of that in through here has changed
Right.
since 1948.
Right, yes, yes. And, you know, so much, the area has changed. I mean, in Bridgeton, we've lost churches to airport expansion. We've lost, you know, schools. And this is actually why we are coming around to people such as yourself to talk about what our community was like. It's, you know, an oral history that we're just trying to preserve for future generations.
Oh, my granddaughter, Tabitha, didn't very well like moving from the small school into a bigger school. Because over in Carlton, they had, I think they had 2 over there, did they not? And they were smaller schools.
Yes.
And I think it was easier for the teachers, and I think it was easier for the kids. But when they take those and close them and make one big school, this is the second time they have built a new school at the same spot in St. Anne's. So we say in there, maybe 15 years, because they had one there. Why they tore that one down and didn't use it, I don't know. Everybody went over to Carleton, or down to Briarcrest.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, like you said, the airport, which they don't need the land, they don't do nothing with it, bought that land out and did the school. Next thing you know, they're building a great big school down here, again, off of Cypress. And that's where my great-grandson Zachariah goes to school at.
Your great-grandson.
Yeah, I
Wow.
watched my great-grandson. I raised 4 sets of grandkids.
Wow.
So they went to school. Now I'm on great-grandkids.
My goodness gracious.
So all these people can go to work and they don't have to worry about their children. Because I take care of them.
I see. Well, thank you so much for letting us come over and talking to us. And we appreciate your time today.
Well, I hope you learned something new.
Oh, sure did.
Yeah, we heard lots of good stories. Thank you.
Thank you.
It was really nice.